Welcome to the Sci-Fi Evolution channel. In the vast expanse of the cosmic web, there are countless species, their worlds so tranquil and secure that the emergence of intelligent life seems to be a natural occurrence. It is akin to witnessing the sunrise every morning, and it is a marvelous sight. This process is inevitable and predictable, and there is nothing extraordinary about it. Nevertheless, the Federation of Aligned Sentience insists on introducing these new species each time they arise. Each time this occurs, a delicate and fragile race of intellectual pacifists steps forward to proudly describe their ordinary world, discussing their peaceful culture and universal respect for others. Their history is predictable, as they develop self-awareness and intelligence, which enables them to cultivate crops and become too numerous for their Solara planet. They then unite to advance space-age technology and leave their planet. These individuals are unaware of the true severity of conflict before their ascent into space. Even then, it is rarely more than a minor skirmish with a few dozen casualties. They refer to this as a war. Natural disasters are so uncommon that most people experience a period of cultural shock when they learn that life can thrive on a planet with a persistent breeze, let alone a hurricane or earthquake. My people also experience shock, but for different reasons. When we first ventured into space, we were astonished to discover that even the most unforgiving environments could support intelligence. We expected such unremarkable and secure worlds to lack the necessary conditions for evolution. Yet the fact that we are the only species to have evolved on what the rest of the galaxy calls a death world is a testament to this. For a time, weak Thar relied on fear to our advantage, capitalizing on the fear others had of our strength and resilience. We pushed our way into positions of power, and it worked too well. Now, there are few who can truly challenge us, except for the fact that our biological advantage has little impact in wars fought from the command centers of ships. We would likely rule the galaxy alone. But even our history of war and combat is not enough to overcome the might of the Federation fleet. Instead, we are reduced to being stereotyped as mindless brutes, mere masses of muscle who know only how to strike. Despite their so-called intelligence, they understand so little about our culture. We have scholars, we have art, music, even with the durability of our scales, the sharpness of our teeth, and the sharpness of our claws. Intelligence has always been our greatest weapon, yet they see only the latter. How could they, when the concept of struggle is foreign to them? The only problems they have are Xyler, the fourth son of Overlord Kale of the Kale Dominion, has once again been dispatched as a Kale representative to attend the Federation's insignificant induction ceremony. His father must send someone, even if only to pretend that we share the same enthusiasm for this event as the rest of the Federation. Without such appearances, other species might believe the rumors that we are preparing for war. The fools! As if we would ever be so foolish. Are they so lacking in understanding the concept of better safe than sorry, or the necessity for prudence? To maintain domestic tranquility, I put aside my vexatious thoughts for this vexatious ritual as it was about to commence. My father had made it a habit to have me recap the proceedings, so as to save him the trouble of watching a recording. Thus, it is I who must force myself to pay attention, no matter how predictable it may be. I believe you might want to pay special attention to this one. Delegate Lyra, seated next to me, is a delegate for the Zywyan Concordance, who were the first to make contact with this new species and are therefore well versed in its details. I only tolerate my seat beside her, because hers is one of the few who even remotely comprehends mine. They evolved in sync with another group on the same planet and, for a brief period, clashed over control. They are the only faction in the entire Federation that engaged in what my people would call a true war, albeit on a small scale. They are the most distant from the heart of the Federation, yet let us rejoice in their presence. To be clear, they are a sophisticated people, But I digress. This is their time to shine. I give the floor to Serafina, representing Terran unity. She gestures downward towards the center of the council chamber. There, standing behind the podium, is the new delegate, a new member of a new species, with a projection device equipped with a translator for galactic standard, allowing them to address the entire council simultaneously. As I anticipated, they are pale and have a delicate appearance, and I can see their thoughts flowing. With each heartbeat, I am mildly surprised to see that they are not as fragile as I had anticipated. I can discern a significant amount of muscle mass, although I am unsure of its functionality. Species from planets with low gravity often develop large, rounded physiques. It also has a covering of fur on its head and face, though it is not abundant. Its teeth are square, with a few pointed ones. It is an omnivore. Then, it speaks, albeit with a relatively low pitch. This is ultimately inconsequential. Thank you, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, and members of the Federation of Aligned Sentience Council. I am Jackson, a Terran, to be precise. Our names share a common structure, albeit with variations in the middle or family names. It is a diverse array of names, which is quite unusual, similar to the conventions of Kale. Although I do not believe that any of my people would dare to use their personal names before their clan names, there are a few who value their titles more than their lineage. My people refer to themselves as Terrans in the plural when speaking of our collective, without making any distinction based on gender. However, many of our languages, which we have hundreds of, do differentiate between genders for most nouns. I will not attempt to list them all here, as it would require us to sit for days. Chuckles and many on the council agree. The difference between a few hours and a few days is negligible. Yet I cannot help but be slightly intrigued by the hundreds of languages. This is a unique trait shared only by my people, where each clan has its own distinct language. The private language used within the clan is reserved for clan marriages, which are quite rare. In the few instances where one clan does not merge with another, individuals may choose to join one or remain with their original clan, or, in extremely rare cases, form a new clan entirely. If this is what Lyra was referring to, I glanced over to seek confirmation, but she offered nothing more than her typical sly smile. The woman is always playing games with me, and there was a moment of silence as the Terran delegate seemed to be reviewing a stack of papers, likely trying to decide which mundane aspect of their world was worth discussing first. As if any of it was extraordinary, I thought it might be best to start by telling you about our home planet and the most prominent cultures. After that, we can delve deeper into our history. The sequence begins with a star that is unremarkable. The system contains 8 planets and numerous planetoids. The system is slightly more active than most, with millions of smaller bodies, but it is not unusual. The parent star must have been quite massive to produce 4 giant planets and 4 large rocky bodies. We focus on their home world, the 3rd planet from the star. Next to it, we see a list of characteristics: radius, general composition, and gravity. Oh, this is fascinating. Their world's gravity is almost identical to Kale's. Their composition and radius are also similar, with a predominance of minerals and water, and a significant amount of heavy metals. Their atmosphere is mostly nitrogen, like Kale, but with more argon. Their Terra has substantial amounts of oxygen and carbon, just like Kale. Perhaps their name is Terra, or perhaps it is the name of their species. Their most powerful clan, and some of their ancient leaders, have chosen not to refer to their species by its own name. The intriguing aspect is that the muscularity I observe in the delegates is not merely a result of excess, but rather a genuine manifestation of strength. They must be strong to maintain their standing, and I do not detect any aquatic or avian features, unless they possess an extraordinary degree of adaptability. Upon closer inspection, I now see it. The same awkward posture that all kale adopt on foreign planets, desperately trying to maintain balance in the face of low gravity. The neural evolution that enables anatomical self-balancing is deceived by the lower gravity and constantly overcompensates. It requires training to even walk without leaping into the air with each step. Lyra is right. I already like these individuals, but I must be cautious. It is too early to make such assertions. A large planet does not necessarily imply a harsh environment, nor does it. I am certain that they will share some of the characteristics of my people. Given their lack of obvious combat adaptations, it is more likely that they are a peaceful race, like all the others. However, even so, I cannot help but hope for any reason to be interested in this ceremony. The delegate resumes, speaking after a brief pause, as the council members fall silent. It seems I am not the only one who has noticed the resemblance between their world and Kale Terra, Mother Terra. Although we usually refer to it simply as Terra, which I am a little embarrassed to admit translates to dirt. Not very imaginative, I know, but that is what our ancestors chose, and we have no intention of changing it. The most striking feature of our planet is water, covering nearly 70% of its surface, and 97% of that is so mineralized that it is toxic to us. Not to mention our industrial revolution has further contaminated it with excessive pollution. In the realm of industrial waste, with the assistance of the ZYN Concordance, we have been steadily addressing this issue of toxic wastewater, covering the vast majority of our planet. The surface of Kale is also largely covered in water, but it is not harmful. In fact, we relied on it in our earliest days, even though it was said to be toxic due to mineralization. The oceans of Kale are also mineralized, so perhaps it is simply that they cannot process high concentrations of alkaline metals. If so, it is weak, but to have survived despite such a limitation, on a world where only a third of the water is drinkable, that at least deserves respect. As a result, Terrans has evolved. Initially, we developed inland areas on the largest landmass on the Terra planet, but it didn't take long for our intelligence to spread across the globe. While we evolved in one of the hottest and most arid regions of our world, our ability to adapt to the harshest environments on Terra was enough to ensure our survival. To elaborate, we transitioned to Zyler's perspective, which showcased a breathtaking variety of landscapes, a staggering number of which resembled the Kale, with a greater abundance of greens, browns, and blues compared to reds, purples, and blacks. We encountered scorching deserts that sweltered during the day and froze at night, lush jungles teeming with thousands of venomous plants, insects, and animals, as well as large predators, vast snow-covered tundras, and ice-covered regions with scarce resources, open grasslands, dense forests, isolated islands. The list goes on. Terra has it all, and Terrans has thrived in every environment. When I began my speech, the council chamber was filled with gasps and whispers. Many eyes turned to me, and there were few who did not immediately recognize the similarity to the presentation given by my great-great-grandfather, Overlord Kalis, the diplomat, when he introduced our species to the council. He had conducted preliminary research on the other races we would be standing beside, noting how safe their worlds were compared to our own, and decided to emphasize this difference to gain the respect and fear of the entire cosmic web. Now, Delegate Jackson of Terra is doing the same. I am no longer slouching in my seat. In fact, I am standing, showing respect for the Terran who has done his homework. I am not so uncivilized as to let this go unnoticed. There are none in the council who are unaware of this custom of my people. When a Kale rises from a seated position, you show respect. I have their undivided attention, yet I silently chuckle to myself, imagining that there are few in the room who can discern the subtle distinctions between a confrontational and a respectful stance. Many may perceive me as defensive or even threatening, but Lyra has been by my side long enough to know that I hold nothing but respect for Delegate Jackson. He continues, albeit now deviating from the script used by my ancestors. It seems they do have a touch of originality, after all, even in these perilous environments, each with its own array of perilous predators. The greatest danger that Terra poses pales in comparison. He switches to a projection that appears to be a Terran model, albeit with an extra set of limbs. I make no jokes about Terrans, except for diseases of all kinds, which, in old age, are the leading cause of death for Terrans, often caused by other Terrans. In most cases, it is an accident, particularly those caused by our vehicles. But throughout our history, prior to the Zyan Concordance, we have discovered that a total of 1.5 billion individuals have lost their lives due to conflicts and strife. This figure only includes our internal and international wars. It does not encompass the thousands who perish each year from murder, or the slightly fewer deaths from accidents. Now, let me delve deeper into the most formidable adversary of Terrans, the Terra. The projection shifts to a scene depicting a small band of early Terrans, clad in garments fashioned from what appears to be animal hides. We are crafting rudimentary tools. And he speaks again. Our origins lie in small bands of hunter-gatherers. Once our ancestral species developed the capacity for complex social organization, it was a short leap to develop our favored method of hunting. The projection shows a group of early Terrans pursuing a large animal. I encounter a large group of animals, all of which are much larger than I had anticipated. The hunting strategy involves a preliminary assault, targeting a member of the herd. The herd becomes alarmed and flees, with the injured individual unable to keep up. The hunters close in for the kill, but my expectations are not met. There is an initial attack, but it is ineffective. Their weapons seem to have little impact on the large animals, and they flee. In fact, many of their shots miss entirely. I cannot understand why this is their preferred method, or whether they are intentionally showing a failed hunt. The scene shifts to a different group of Terrans in the same environment, pursuing the same herd. The Terrans pursue them, but this is a poor idea. If any of the herd turned to fight, they would be quickly overwhelmed, especially since they lack natural weapons. However, this does not happen. The animals simply continue to run. The projector resumes its projection, and now it is night. The same herd, the same Terrans. What are they up to? Then it dawns on me. The herd is asleep, and they have just spent the majority of their day running, and many of them are still injured and exhausted. This means now, yes, I see most of the herd awake and running, but a significant number of them are moving very slowly compared to the rest, and some have not even awakened at all. The Terrans, meanwhile, move as if they have an endless supply of energy. With so many of the animals severely fatigued, they are no match for the hunters at their peak. This is a clever strategy. The Terrans must have some sort of adaptation that allows them to simply outlast their prey. The patience required for this is extraordinary. We are a very impatient species, always ready to act, a remnant of our days of ambush hunting. But this kind of strategy requires boundless energy, patience, and foresight. These are qualities that require a deep understanding of the future. This is the message he is conveying to anyone who might perceive a conflict. We are prepared. I take note of this. If our people engage in war, we must be vigilant of their every action. Even the most insignificant or mundane actions can and will be used as part of a strategy of attrition if they believe they have the upper hand. To be honest, I would rather forge alliances. These individuals I encounter only benefit from such a partnership. He speaks, and I attentively listen. But as we depart from our origins, the strategy is insufficient to sustain our expansion. Agriculture and the domestication of animals flourish in a small valley between two rivers, swiftly spreading across the globe. Within a few thousand years, we transition from tribes to villages to towns to cities to empires to nations as our needs evolve. Neighboring settlements trade their surplus for what they lack, giving rise to an economy. We invent currencies and distribution systems, construct roads, and engage in commerce. We learn how to modify the environment to suit our purposes, harnessing the Terra's resources to create structures, vehicles, tools, and weapons. Indeed, weapons. Even though we have long since established dominance over the food chain in nearly every ecosystem on the planet, there still exist other Terran beings. Reflect on the fact that only a small fraction of the water on our planet is suitable for consumption, and the majority of it is confined to rivers and lakes, which are concentrated in specific regions. The space required for agricultural purposes is of paramount importance, and the resources needed to effectively develop and utilize this space are limited. The vast majority of Terran conflicts are rooted in scarcity, with insufficient resources to go around, and our progress has been constrained by our inability to efficiently utilize the resources at our disposal. If our advancement stalls and our population surpasses our capacity to produce, it will inevitably lead to war. The projector shifts to a montage of violent confrontations, featuring armies of Terrans clad in metal and leather, mounted on domesticated animals and piloting war machines. It is a mesmerizing sight, akin to gazing into a mirror. They have traversed the same path as my people, albeit in our case, the resource we were missing was heavy metals, which are essential for our advancement. Without them, our bones would become weak and brittle, and conflicts over regions with iron, copper, and other metals would become frequent and widespread. The reel continues to demonstrate how the scale of battles has changed and how technology has improved, with armor transitioning from metal to fiber, weapons evolving from blades to projectiles with ever-increasing lethality, and vehicles transforming into flying, aquatic, and guided munitions, including the infamous atomic bomb. Once considered a nightmare child of destructive tendencies, these weapons are now shared by the Federation's newest species. They do not reveal any more than this, as anything more modern would tread upon their current arms and armaments. I am certain they have secrets they do not wish to share. Of course, resources are not the only thing we lack. Oh, what is this? Terrans are proud, spiteful, and vengeful, and we do not take kindly to others. Insults, resentments, and disputes have been a part of our heritage since the dawn of time. Nationalistic pride often led to conflicts, as minor disagreements between different cultural groups escalated into full-scale wars. These conflicts were not as simple as they appear, despite the fact that they occurred in a world filled with danger and scarcity. They had the time and energy to develop more advanced cultural concepts, which my people did not encounter until we ventured into space. They fought wars over these concepts, and I do not need to look at the expressions of horror and disgust on the faces of the other delegates to see how they thought such concepts precluded violence. They believed it was the sole preserve of my people, the natural consequence of a lack of culture, religion, or philosophy. Here is a tangible example of how those who once boasted of their intellectual superiority were mistaken. I cannot help but laugh, and I laugh loudly and joyfully, so that everyone in the room can hear me. I revel in the gaze of the delegates who once looked down upon my people. The remainder of the ceremony proceeds without further incident. Delegate Jackson proceeds to elaborate on the finer aspects of our culture, our beliefs and ideas, our languages and mythology, our appreciation for literature, and our games, both digital and physical. Many of these games bear a striking resemblance to war simulations, no less sophisticated than those of any other species present. In fact, in many cases, they are even more advanced. They are as intelligent as the worms that surround us, yet they are also as violent. This is a living contradiction, I am sure, that other delegates would call a paradox if they took the time to truly comprehend my people. They would discover a vibrant and diverse culture, brimming with depth and complexity. If there is one thing I must say about Terrans, it is that they seem to be at odds with their own violent inclinations. They carry a sense of guilt about their past, which they view as a flaw that must be corrected. They see it as a dark side that must be suppressed and controlled. It is not my place to judge them, but if I were to offer them advice, it would be to stop denying their true nature and embrace who they are. They should find ways to satisfy their needs without losing control. Terrans have a long history of finding ways to channel their aggression, though they are not always as safe as other species would like. Death is not a stranger to them, though they do not fling it wantonly like some other species. Instead, they spend so much time rejecting themselves that they find themselves in a precarious position. They must remain vigilant against themselves, lest they succumb to their weaknesses and engage in a destructive cycle. They have much to learn from my people, and I pray to my ancestors that they will heed my words as the presentation concludes. Lyra turns to me with the same smile. I see. I take it. You like them for the first time in my life. I return with a friendly smile of my own. Yes, I do. Thank you, Lyra. And I must ask, how do Terrans greet each other? As I step out of the council chamber and into the lobby, I let out a sigh of relief. It went better than I had anticipated. I was concerned that the script we provided me with was too abrasive, and that it might have given the cosmic web a negative first impression. However, fortunately, the latter part of the presentation seemed to work wonders, turning some of those sour expressions around. Who would have thought that all it takes is a little effort? The extraterrestrials were shown sports, anime, music, art, and so on. Damn, there I go again, talking to myself in my head. The therapist says I need to break this habit, which seems to cause some kind of emotional detachment. Whatever it is, it helps me keep my thoughts organized. Imagine that all my innermost thoughts are constantly being observed and judged by a panel of observers. This allows me to counter-argue myself and more easily identify the flaws in my plans and ideas. I play both the role of the devil and the advocate in the dining area. I managed to secure some exotic-looking finger foods, which fortunately tasted better than they looked. A number of delegates gave me strange looks. Some of them seemed to avoid me, and a good number, more than I expected, approached me directly to discuss some finer points of Terran culture. Fortunately, I was prepared. In my responses, I was able to steer most of the inquiries towards more direct and pertinent sources. As a military veteran, this was not my forte, but that's what happens when you go above and beyond. The high-ranking officials back home didn't want to send their valuable personnel to an alien station, so they chose me. Suddenly, the low murmur of conversation in the room fell silent. It was a bit unsettling, especially when I noticed everyone looking in my direction, or more specifically, at the enormous, reptilian creature entering. It was easily 9 feet tall and built like a fortress, with a body that resembled a cross between a crocodile and a dragon, without wings or fire-breathing capabilities, but definitely with claws and teeth. It had at least several dozen of these, and it was covered in thick red scales. I couldn't discern its expression, but it definitely seemed to be enraged. I am experiencing the effects of low gravity, just like I am. I guess it's relatable. Ah, I remember now. The Kale delegate, I think. Xyler or something. I'll just call him the delegate, the Kale delegate. The Kale is definitely looking at me and approaching me. The higher-ups warned me that the Kale might perceive my presentation as a threat and advised me to avoid it at all costs. They made me take a week-long course on Kale honorifics and political protocol to ensure that I did not inadvertently declare war or something similar. It seems that none of the other species needed this, as it appears that the Kale are the only ones who have more than one word for war. This really caught my attention when I first heard it. Every species in the cosmic web, except us and one other, is inherently peaceful. Essentially, none of them have anything resembling Terran. The historical dispute has resulted in a few minor skirmishes here and there, but nothing resembling a full-scale war. It's quite thought-provoking. Don't you think we're the bad guys? I spent a moment trying to recall the proper greeting for strangers, but he beat me to it with a phrase I wasn't expecting. Hello, Delegate Jackson. I am Xyler, the son of Overlord Kale of the Kale Dominion. I would like to discuss terms for a cultural exchange with you. His voice was deep and rumbling, sounding like a crocodile if it could speak. He also extended his hand for a handshake. I distinctly remembered that extending your hand was considered an aggressive gesture, typically reserved for challenges. But he was talking about cultural exchange terms. Was there some hidden meaning behind this? I extended my hand for a handshake, not wanting to leave the political delegate feeling insignificant. I accepted. Why not? I would pass this on to the higher-ups, so they could speak with someone more knowledgeable in the field. I am merely a retired soldier who was sent because they did not want to risk their valuable personnel. I relaxed my hand, letting go. The creature did not pull me closer. In fact, it stared at me with one of its beady, slit eyes. I am not a coward. I held its gaze, not allowing an alien crocodile to think I am weak. Eventually, it backed away and let go, then made the same rumbling noise it had made during the presentation, like rocks in a tumble dryer. I am not sure if this is a good or bad sign. It rumbled at me again. Retired soldier, I like that. I am a warrior. In our clan, military service is mandatory, but many only serve for the required time. In my case, I serve my time. I would rather take on a position that benefits the Empire than engage in a power struggle with my siblings. The stone throne may be luxurious, but I prefer a cozy rock. I start to chuckle, but quickly suppress it. Someone gives me a strange look, so I save myself by pretending it was a cough. The body needs external sources of heat and cold to maintain stability. I concur. I am certain that other delegates would not appreciate discussions of less intellectual matters in their presence. Let us retire to a more comfortable room to discuss the exchange. I was forced into it, but it did not go as I had anticipated. I was concerned about having to perform a delicate political dance to avoid an international incident, but instead, I had a pleasant conversation with someone. It appears that Xyler is also accountable to a powerful figure, albeit his father happens to be his superior. This does not make him any less irritating than other individuals I encounter, but it does ensure that he pays attention to the presentation, so he doesn't have to watch it himself. He also has a penchant for drinking seawater, it seems, back in his home country. I imagine there is plenty of it to go around, and he enjoys the finer varieties. Let me tell you, I have discovered a new favorite whiskey. At least, I believe it is whiskey, as it certainly tastes like it, but it packs a powerful punch. It burns the eyebrows and causes the nose hairs to stand on end. We both got drunk and ended up doing some foolish things. I can't recall what. It turned into an incident, but a positive one. I believe the influential figures back home commended me on my handling of the situation.